Good day. I'm Dean Meisenheimer, Director of Content Management Platform Marketing for EMC. Today we're going to discuss the architecture of the Documentum Content Server OEM Edition. Now, the OEM edition of Documentum is based on the same core technology as our enterprise version, but it's packaged for use embedded within other business applications. So let's get started. The first part of the architecture is the repository. And what makes up a Documentum repository? Well, it's actually a combination of components. There's the physical storage, where the files are physically placed and stored. Second is a relational database, where all of the metadata about the content is stored at. And then third is a set of full-text indices, which is used by the search engine to retrieve content during a search. Now, unlike the enterprise version of Documentum, the OEM edition embeds a relational database. The enterprise version requires a third-party database. The OEM edition provides that as part of the packaging. We also use a different search engine with the enterprise version. We use the Lisane open source Java search engine because it has a much lighter footprint. So the repository is actually a virtual repository that's comprised of the physical storage, the database, and the full-text indices. Now, this all gets managed by the Documentum Content Server. The Content Server provides an object relational model that manages this underlying infrastructure. A business application or an end user will never directly access the database, the file system, or the search engine. They will only communicate with the content server, which then manages these underlying components. Now, the content server adds all of the services that we're familiar with in a content management system, things such as authentication with LDAP or Active Directory servers, check-in, check-out capabilities, file locking, version control, security, controlling read and write access to the information in the repository. The search capabilities, both for metadata search and for full-text search. The ability to manage XML and compound documents. And process management through a built-in workflow engine. And then for any activities placed on any content in the repository, a detailed set of audit trails to help you meet your compliance requirements. Now, everything that goes into the repository is treated as an object. And what do I mean by that? Well, an object has certain properties. It has metadata associated with it. It has security associated with it. It has certain actions that can be associated with it, certain methods, for example. And I have the ability to create custom object types in Documentum. So there's a base object type called a document. And this has attributes such as name, who created it, when was it created, last time it was modified. Well, I can create a subtype called a purchasing document. Well, the purchasing document inherits name, date created, date last modified, but then it can also have unique information about a purchasing document, such as what budget year is it associated with, what department initiated, what department within the organization, whose budget is it associated with. Well, then as a subtype of that, I could also have a purchase order document type. Well, that inherits name, date created, date modified, budget year, department, and now it's got information unique to a specific purchase order, such as the PO number, the vendor that it's associated with. So we can get very granular with our object structure. And then every object and every version of every object has unique metadata associated with it, as well as unique security associated with it. So I can actually have different security and metadata on different versions of the same piece of content. So the content server and the underlying repository make up the data layer of a Documentum-based application. Now, sitting on top of this is a set of developer services. The first, which is called DFC, or Documentum Foundation Classes. The developer services provide a programmatic interface to all of the services and the repository provided by the Documentum Content Server. As I mentioned, in the current release, there's two access layers. First is the DFC, a set of low-level APIs that provide access to the full functionality of the content server. DFC can be accessed through a Java or a .NET programming environment. And you can really use the development language of choice, whether that is C, C++, C#, Java, whatever your preference is. Well, then sitting on top of DFC is another programmatic layer called the Business Objects Framework, or BOF for short. Business Object Framework allows me to encapsulate a number of different DFC functions and the business logic into a reusable object. So I'll give you a couple of examples. First, there's what we call a service-based object. In DFC, accessing my inbox, doing different tasks, deleting, adding, promoting things are all different DFC calls. With Business Object Framework, I can create a business object that says, open the inbox, retrieve the items, perform several operations such as removing, forwarding, or deleting items from the inbox. And it can operate on any type of object that may be forwarded to me as part of a workflow in my inbox. Right? So it's a service-based object. Well, the second is a type-based object. So going back to my purchase order example, a type-based object allows me to enforce things like data validation, referential integrity, and very object-specific business rules. So, for example, when I create a new purchase order, I may want to override how it's saved and go out and validate that the PO number and the vendor we've entered is a valid vendor in our purchasing system. So that's an example of a type-based object, and it operates on a specific type. So DFC and BOF work together to really provide, along with the business application, to create the business logic layer of a Documentum-based application. Now, with the OEM edition, there's no user interface shipped. The user interface is actually provided by the OEM partner's business application that they're embedding the content management services inside of. Now, with the next release, we're going to be introducing another layer that we refer to as Documentum Foundation Services. This will provide support for a services-oriented architecture development framework. DFS will sit above the DFC and the Business Objects Framework, and it will provide an out-of-the-box set of web services libraries. And it's designed to allow non-Documentum professionals to very quickly build content management-enabled business applications. The types of out-of-the-box services that will be provided are things such as object services that allow me to perform operations on different object types. Lookup services, so I can go in and find and define services or object types. Schema services that allow me to view the data dictionary. Security services for manipulating information within the repository. Version services for creating or versioning objects. Query services to access the metadata of the full text engine. Right? And this is going to be a standards-based set of services, providing support for standard SOA-based frameworks. This will be available with the OEM edition later in 2007. Now, the other thing that we've added with the Content Server OEM edition is what we call a set of OEM services. And that's a set of services that sit alongside the stack and provide things such as a predefined set of administration jobs within the Content Server that minimize the amount of administration that needs to be done on a daily basis. Because it's designed to be embedded within another application, you want to minimize the amount of administration that needs to be done. Secondly is what we call a silent installer, which now allows me to embed the installation of the entire stack inside another business application's installation. From a single command line interface, I pass in a set of parameters such as an XML config file that contains a lot of the setup information, how it needs to run, and then that installation can now be embedded within your business application's installation, and this environment will be completely installed, configured, set up. All of your environment and variables will be set. All of your start and stop scripts will be set. The business user never sees a separate Documentum installation. So I hope this provides a good overview of the Content Server OEM Edition architecture. If you'd like to find out more information, please visit our website at software.emc.com/OEM, where you'll find information on all of our OEM products. I'm Dean Meisenheimer. Good day.